Reporters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador. I am Estefania Bravo, and this is From the South. The leader of the Landless Movement, Aloysio Sampaio, has been shot dead in Brazil. Sampaio's wife told the police she saw two people leaving their house as she was coming back from picking up their children from school. Only one of the alleged perpetrators was arrested. Still in Brazil, pre-election tensions are heating up once again with just over 2 weeks to go to the runoff vote. Thousands of Brazilian youth marched on Thursday night against the right-wing presidential candidate Jair Bolsonaro. They say his rhetoric has encouraged an increase in violence against opponents. Protesters in Sao Paulo chanted "Ele não" or "Not him" and carried placards saying "My country is not for sale." They oppose both Bolsonaro's misogynistic and homophobic views and his neoliberal economic program of cuts and privatization.
Being LGBTI, I am afraid of his supporters beating us up. That has happened to me.
The election has divided the country amongst a population that after 4 elections is tired of a government in power and who wants radical change. This radical change is the far right. The far right defends Nazis, fascists, racists, homophobes, human rights ideal.
And world-famous artist Roger Waters has joined the "Ele não" or "Not him" protest against Bolsonaro. The co-founder of the rock band Pink Floyd projected the words "Ele não" during his concert in Sao Paulo. Waters is the latest of a string of artists who have joined the social media campaign against the far-right presidential candidate. The Workers' Party candidate Fernando Haddad has defended Catholic Church against the attacks perpetrated by Bolsonaro supporters. He also said it is time to remember the Catholic ideas of protecting life, preserving democracy, and fighting against violence. Haddad also rejected violent acts by right-wing supporters in the last days. Haddad has a in the suburb of Jardim Ángela in Sao Paulo. The neighborhood was once known as the most violent in the world. Our correspondent Ignacio Lemos was there and has the details.
We are in the Church of the Martyr Saints in the Sao Paulo neighborhood of Jardim Ángela. Fernando Haddad, the candidate of the Workers' Party in the runoff election on October 28th, is here. We should explain that in the latest opinion polls, there was a difference of 6% between Jair Bolsonaro and Fernando Haddad among Catholic voters, and a difference of 40% among evangelicals. This is a clear illustration of how evangelical leaders are backing Bolsonaro. Haddad is taking part in this mass on the day of Our Lady of the Aparecida, which is also dedicated to Brazilian youth and the educational policies developed by the PT governments. Haddad is himself a teacher, of course, and was Minister of Education in the governments of both Lula da Silva and Dilma Rousseff. Yesterday, the candidate of the right met businessmen in Rio de Janeiro and told them he will not continue demarcating indigenous lands, that this will be put up for sale. And this on the eve of the 12th of October, a very important day in Latin America, as the Day of Indigenous Resistance. So this is the situation with just 2 weeks to go until the second round. A clear polarization between two projects. One that proposes extending democratic and social rights in Brazil, and another that has produced violence in the streets, and which has been marked by Jair Bolsonaro's absence from the televised debates. Yesterday, we should have had the first debate before the runoff, but it didn't happen, because Jair Bolsonaro didn't turn up, supposedly on medical advice. However, he did go to that meeting with businessmen in Rio. This has been condemned by many people, including Fernando Haddad, as an attempt by Bolsonaro to avoid having to defend his neoliberal economic program. So we'll continue following Fernando Haddad's activities here in one of the most vulnerable communities of Sao Paulo.
We thank Nacho Lemos for that report. Congress in Peru has approved a new law that allows elderly prisoners to be on the house arrest. President Martí Vizcarra now has to approve the law project, but if he doesn't, the project will return to Congress. The bill could benefit former President Alberto Fujimori, who was ordered to go back to prison after a court revoked his pardon. Opposition parties in Congress say this law was thought to benefit the former president. Meanwhile, Keiko Fujimori's party, the Popular Force, says they are not planning any desperate measures regarding her arrest. The Secretary General of the party, Jose Chimpler, said their members believe she is innocent and hope for her quick release. Chimpler added the court could suspend her detention order by Monday or Tuesday of next week. Keiko was arrested for alleged money laundering. Our correspondent in Lima, Jaime Herrera, brings us more.
Victims of the crimes committed during former President Alberto Fujimori's terms are protesting the new law. They are asking President Martín Vizcarra to veto the project. They also announced more protests for the coming days. The new law will benefit Fujimori as it will prevent him to go to the jail again, after a coup revoked his pardon. Military men accused of committing crimes against human rights could also benefit from this law.
We thank Jaime Herrera for that report. The Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro has accused the U.S. of ordering the Colombian government to assassinate him.
Imperialismo ha decidido.
You know that, don't you? They have given the order from the White House to kill Maduro. Not a hair will touch me because God protects me and protects the people of Venezuela. And they have given the oligarchy of Bogota the task of killing me.
President Maduro was speaking at the closing ceremony of the Workers' Congress. There, trade unions and workers from various sectors presented proposals to help boost the country's economy.
I come to ask workers that all these proposals help inform that 2025 homeland plan for the working class and keep it alive. Once and for all, brothers and sisters, I believe that this guidelines hold the power of positive transformation, and the Homeland Plan must contain at least 3 components from the working class. Economic transformation is a priority.
Desde la clase obrera.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Around 100 Venezuelan migrants will leave Ecuador on Friday under the Return to the Homeland Government Plan. This is the 6th flight to depart from Ecuador since the program was launched. Venezuelan people said they are happy to come back home as they have faced poor working conditions and also discrimination. And Venezuela is celebrating the Day of Indigenous Resistance. Wearing their colorful traditional dresses, they gathered to honor indigenous culture and their resistance to the arrival of colonial powers. The day is seen as a symbol of nationalist activism across the American continent.
It was Chavez who gave the name of the Day of Resistance. This continent is wettered with blood and ashes of our brothers, warriors, heroes who were brutally murdered. So we will keep the resistance. We will keep on existing and fighting for our indigenous rights. When everything seems to be falling down, Hugo Chavez arrived with revolution and Bolivarian process. He served justice to us. He made us visible, gave us opportunity and support us.
For many indigenous peoples in Latin America and the Caribbean, the 12th of October is a day of resistance. For them, there is no reason to celebrate the arrival of Christopher Columbus in 1492. Our correspondent in Panama reports.
This camp is still resisting the Barro Blanco hydroelectric project, a struggle that represents the abuses suffered by the indigenous peoples of the Panamanian Isthmus.
They have violated our rights with this project. We want our peoples to be free. We want our children to have the right to live well. And with this, it is not possible. We want to be respected and be treated like people.
In addition to the hydroelectric projects, the more than 7 indigenous peoples of this country also condemn labor, exploitation and other abuses.
We emphasize that our rights have been violated. The right to childhood, the right to family. All those rights have been brutally violated for our Engabe people.
The rate of poverty among the indigenous communities in Panama is as high as 98%, in addition to high levels of malnutrition and disease. For these peoples, their rights continue to be constrained.
For us, it should not be celebrated, because we will be celebrating the spilling of innocent people's blood, who lived in a free and peaceful America. Before 1492, our people existed, so there was nothing to discover. It is a fallacy to speak of a celebration when there must be mourning because innocent Ngabe Bugle people died.
If the problems continue, these communities warn that they are willing to die to defend their rights and their dignity.
And hundreds of students in Chile continue to march against the Safe Classroom bill promoted by President Sebastián Piñera. Protesters say the proposed law seeks to expel all students who raise their voices against the government. They see it as a copy of laws used by the dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet. Although the Senate has described the bill unconstitutional, Piñera has vowed to move forward with his proposal even without support.
We want to say in a strong and clear voice that we will not allow this law to be passed, and we will go to the street to reject it whenever it is necessary, because it generates own integration, repression, evading the critical thinking of the classroom.
Colombian farmers are supporting the national program for the substitution of illicit crops. However, it seems the implementation of the program could be at risk.
Close to 80,000 families, part of the integral national program of substitution of illicit crops, are facing uncertainty. They say the government of Iván Duque hasn't paid attention to the program.
With the previous government, we discussed about the volunteer eradication of illicit crops by implementing the program in different departments and municipalities of the country. Since then, we have been in standby. We haven't had any conversation with the new government.
Former President Juan Manuel Santos said that the budget for this program was approved, but reality seems to be other.
For 2019, we need a budget of 2.5 billion Colombian pesos, but the government is assigning a small budget for this and also for the integral agricultural reform. We will need an additional amount for a land fund, but it is not planned yet.
Experts say the success of the substitution program is based on the amount of public funds. According to analyst Juan Carlos Garzón, it is difficult that this government will change their way of fighting drug trafficking.
In Colombia, people talk about drug policies, but the country does not really have one. We have a bunch of tools used independently. It will be a real challenge to create policies that work in the coming years.
Meanwhile, social organizations have reported 43 leaders working on the substitution of illicit crops program have been killed.
At least 12 people have died in landslides in the center of Colombia. Another 4 people have been injured in the Marquetalia municipality. The landslides were caused by heavy rains that have affected the area for the past 3 weeks. And the chair of the Group of 20, or G20, is expressing concern about trade tensions brewing among the countries. Nicolás Dujovne, who is also Argentina's Treasury Minister, says the differences that persist must be resolved by members directly involved. He made the appeal at the IMF and World Bank annual meeting in Bali.
Minister, you cross over the two, but
with just a few days to go until the Vatican declares Monsignor Oscar Romero a saint, social movements in El Salvador are demanding justice for his murder in 1980. They want those responsible to be brought to trial.
The Catholic faithful in El Salvador, along with human rights organizations, unions and citizens in general, are demanding that a judge in the capital speed up the criminal case against the murderers of Monsignor Romero.
We haven't been able to move forward with the case. We have talked to the judge about this, and he told us he has too much work.
Monsignor Romero was killed on March 24, 1980, as he celebrated Mass in the Church of Divine Providence in San Salvador. A truth commission set up under the peace agreements attributed the murder to death squads commanded by the now deceased Army Major Roberto D'Aubuisson.
There is an absence of justice for 38 years. The state has neglected the victims of the armed conflict. And I say victims because Romero is the first of those victims of the savage repression carried out in the 70s and 80s.
3 days ahead of his canonization by Pope Francis in the Vatican, the plaintiffs say the sanctity of Romero will not be complete until those who took part in his murder are brought to justice.
The judge should issue a formal request for Interpol to locate and deport Captain Álvaro Saravia. That is one of the demands being made. Another is to take steps to reconstruct the crime in which Monsignor Romero was killed.
Although there is joy at the canonization of Monsignor Romero on October 14th, the impunity enjoyed by his murderers leaves an unpaid debt of justice and reparations.
Guadalupean writer Maurice Kahn has won the new Academy Prize in Literature. The award was set up as an alternative in protest to the scandal over sexual abuse in the Nobel Literature Prize. The Swedish librarians nominated 47 authors who were then voted on by nearly 33,000 people from around the world. Conde won the award for her writing about Guadalupe. She says the Caribbean island is only mentioned when there are hurricanes or earthquakes. The Nobel Prize in Literature was postponed for 2018 after a man affiliated with the Swedish Academy was jailed for rape. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. 6 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces as they demonstrated in the Gaza Strip. Palestinians clashed with Israel's security forces as they demonstrate along the Gaza-Israel border. Injured protesters have been taken to a hospital in Gaza City. The Palestinian Health Ministry said the victims haven't been identified yet. The UN says more than 800 children have been released by a Nigerian militia group. The children were recruited by the Civilian Joint Task Force, a government-backed group that fights against Boko Haram. Almost half of the released are 15 or younger. According to the UN, more than 1,000 children associated with the militia group have been freed.
833 of those children have been determined to be directly associated with CJTF. UNICEF, with its partners, will provide the appropriate age and gender-specific community-based reintegration support to all children who've dissociated from the CJTF, as well as other vulnerable children who are found at the communities and are at risk of recruitment.
I decided to join the militia group because there is no security in our community. We had only 2 security members in the community before. So I joined them to make it 3. If I see Boko Haram coming, I will go and tell them to come and catch them.
Police in Zimbabwe have beaten and arrested scores of union leaders and activists ahead of a planned protest against the economic crisis. Among those detained is the president of the country's largest trade union, Peter Mutasa, from the ZCTU. Mustasa had called for a protest in Harare on Thursday despite a ban on gatherings due to an outbreak of cholera. Unions have been angered by rising prices and shortages of basic daily items from bread to medicine and fuel. Landslides in Uganda have killed at least 40 people, and the death toll is expected to rise. Landslides were triggered after a river burst its banks following heavy rainfall in Bududa district. Rescue teams are on the ground, but they are struggling to access some of the affected areas as it's still very dangerous. And now let's take a look at what else is happening around the world.
Hundreds of mourners have gathered to pay respect to the Bulgarian TV journalist Victoria Marinova at her funeral. She was raped and murdered Saturday in the Bulgarian town of Rus. German authorities are set to extradite a 20-year-old Bulgarian suspect. Severin Krashimirov, who admitted to have hit a woman and throwing her into a bush under the influence of alcohol and drugs, is expected to be on trial within 10 days. Afghanistan is set to deploy biometric verification machines for the first time in the elections to curb voting fraud. In the capital, Kabul, where 1/5 of the population lives, authorities want to avoid people to vote more than once. It was last-minute decision to try to distribute the devices to more than 5,000 polling stations, and critics fear they will fail to work or won't arrive in time.
The votes will not be valid from our Commission's perspective, and any ballot paper which does not contain biometrics sticker number, the Commission will not accept those papers.
A high-speed train with 510 passengers had caught on fire in Germany. But no injuries have been reported. At least 2 train cars caught on fire early morning en route between Cologne and Munich, but all passengers managed to leave unharmed. The cause of the fire is not yet known.
Thousands of anti-independence demonstrators have marched for unity in Barcelona on Spain's National Day. According to local police, about 35,000 people demonstrated, chanting pro-unity slogans and waving Spanish flags. The march took place just a year after Catalonia's failed declaration of independence. Polls show Catalonians favoring and opposing separation are almost evenly divided. And finally, India is having its Me Too moment as a number of women are accusing Bollywood actors and directors of sexual harassment. The movement gained steam after Bollywood actress Tanushree Dutta recently accused a co-actor of harassing her on the set of a movie 10 years ago. Following that allegation, many female journalists have started to share their experiences of sexual abuse in the media. Now, the government has issued a statement saying it has zero-tolerance policy towards sexual crimes. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And also join us on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.